August 6, 2018, allegedly, according to that thing we call a calendar. And this indeed is the Ocelli Effect, broadcast live from the facilities of Ocelli.com, but also heard on a variety of other networks. We do appreciate you guys for tuning in on this particular moon day, or Monday as you might call it. It is the first broadcast day of this particular week, right? And what are we doing? Well, we're continuing on with this wonderful series with Jordan Maxwell. And got to tell you guys, I'm really happy to be doing this with Jordan. It has been a privilege and an honor to be part of this. We are now up to the 6th part. Okay, we took a week off. Jordan was a little busy the one day. That was the only reason why. We took a little week off, but I got to tell you, this has been one of the best series I've ever done, and in my opinion, but also is one of the best series that I've listened to out there regarding this particular topic. Why? Because we have the unique privilege of having Jordan Maxwell with us, and the topic, of course, is religion in general. Now, we have certainly remained in the area of the Old Testament quite extensively. Why? Because so much of Western religion really has a lot to do with the Old Testament, the characters of the Old Testament, the truth of the Old Testament, but it's not exactly as advertised, just like most things on the planet, and you are confounded by your language. And enough out of me. Jordan, how are you doing tonight, first of all?
Well, I'm here. I'm not all here, but I'm here, and thank you again, Charles, for having me on the show. And I haven't really been able to collect all of my thoughts for the last 5 shows, so I'm not really sure what it is I've talked about, because when I'm on shows, it's like channeling. I just talk, and all kinds of things come to my mind from over the years of looking at it. But I may repeat myself, but that's okay. I don't care, because that's what I do sometimes, is repeat myself. But at least I try and remember all the things I wanted to talk about. And it's kind of hard keeping track, if you know what I mean. If you've been looking at something for 60 years, all kinds of strange things that I've been looking into over the past 6 decades, that all of it I'd love to be able to talk about, and I have on occasions on your show in particular. I've finally been able to talk about some of the religious stuff that needs to be aired, and we'll see where we go tonight with some more material. I think I'm going to talk a little bit about the need to reformulate Christianity. I believe that Christianity is totally different today than when it was founded, a couple thousand years ago. I don't think that Christianity today bears any resemblance whatsoever to anything that was understood to be Christianity at the beginnings of this period of time in which Christianity came into civilization. So I'm very interested in trying to reestablish some of the old ancient ideas and concepts that we would call Christian, original Christianity. But today, most people have never heard any of this. They have no idea where any of it came from.
Well, for starters, last show you described to us quite accurately how the Roman Empire at first had described what would later become Christianity as atheist to begin with, which was kind of interesting. We didn't delve too far into it, and you are picking up exactly where you should, my friend. I don't know how it is you're telling me you don't remember what you covered, but you're picking up exactly where you're supposed to. And you and I had a conversation before air, but it had nothing to do with the show, which is funny. But, it was interesting that you pick up exactly. Listen, sometimes you might repeat yourself, but you don't undermine your own credibility in any way, shape, or form. You at half of your capacity is better than 10 of the average men at full capacity. So when it comes to this sort of discussion, your studies are are unique to you, and quite honestly, I hate that you even say that, to be frank with you. So please, by all means, continue on with this topic in this direction. We've obviously covered Moses. We've covered, like I said, the Old Testament quite extensively, exactly what God is it that the Catholics worship. We've talked about that. We've talked about the symbolism. You can still see many, many topics have been covered already in 10 hours of discussion, and you're picking up exactly where you should, to my mind. And meanwhile, I've had an intense area of study for half the amount of time that you've had. I've been on this earth almost, well, not half the time you've been on this earth, but I mean 30-year difference between us, and quite honestly, you're functioning better than I do. So please, go ahead.
Well, I appreciate it, and I've been told that some of my personal friends tell me, at your age, so many people are in oxygen tents and don't even know they're alive. And yet at 78, I'm still giving lectures and doing seminar presentations, etc. And if I could, if my body just felt better, which I'm never going to, because of age just takes so much away from you. But if I felt better, I really am anxious to go around the world again to give lectures. I've been all around the world giving lectures in different countries, and I would love to do that again. I've spoken at about, 12, 13 different universities, and I'm negotiating right now with a major university to be able to give a series of lectures in which I will have a lot of slides and pictures to show the young students in universities what's really actually going on in the world. Not what you thought or what your class told you or what your teacher told you, but the real story. It's about time somebody told you something true. And so, and I've got all the documents and pictures to prove it, but it's all very controversial, and I love it. I love finding dark stuff that people don't even know exists, and exposing it to the light. And that's what I've tried to do all of my life.
Well, right, and to continue to learn about that, by the way, here's my obligatory drop, and to cut you off again, but for good cause. Right. JordanMaxwellShow.com is the website to go to, which is the only website that is Jordan Maxwell's, by the way. And when you go there, there is a Research Society button which you can click on. You can join and get much deeper into the type of information that we're covering tonight and a whole lot of other topics. Realistically, this is like one of many areas that are in the Jordan Maxwell Show Research Society section, and you go to a different website when you go there, but beginning with, you have to go to JordanMaxwellShow.com, and I stress the show because there are many imitators out there. However, this is the only website that is Jordan Maxwell's, JordanMaxwellShow.com. Okay, Jordan, I'm sorry about that, but you know what? I normally get to that right away, and I didn't tonight, so I wanted to make sure we got there before we get completely enthralled by what you're going to tell us about the formation, foundation, and, well, reformation of Christianity, which, if you read a general sort of mainstream history on this, they'll tell you about the reforms of Martin Luther. They'll tell you about the Calvinists. They'll tell you about these different reformers who have come through, the Methodist Church being born from the Catholic Church at one point, because individuals didn't agree with all of the dogmatic rituals and things like this. But you're going to tell us something a little different, although you might include snippets of these facts along the way too, huh?
Yes, well, I'm mostly interested in the very, very bedrock stuff, where it really came from. Because if you get into the discussion of church and canon law and what the scriptures say and what the different religions' interpretation of the different scriptures, that you could go on for the rest of your life and do a show every day. for the rest of your life, and you'll have nothing but discussion after discussion about things which nobody seems to know anything about, and everybody has a different idea. I'm not interested in doing that. I'm interested in going back to the very bedrock where things actually came from. And when you do that, you're going to find, as I have and others have too, and you can find on my research society website on my home page all kinds of pictures and documents talking about things which you've heard of in religion, but you never actually knew what they meant. And so that's what I try and do. I try and demystify and boil down to the common denominator of what these religious churches and belief systems, where they actually came from and what they're actually in fact talking about. And so many times all of these illustrious ideas and belief systems in religion, when you do the research, very few people will be able to do that kind of research because it takes days and weeks and years. And most people don't have time. They're raising a family and doing what normal people do. They don't live abnormal lives like I do. And so that's why I feel I want to bring to the attention of people who don't have time to do this research. Well, here's where to start if you're really interested. If you're not interested, I don't care. But if you are really interested in where things come from and where ideas developed and what they really mean, not what you thought they meant, then that's why I want to be here to help people to find the quickest way to get to that kind of information. And my website, my Jordan Maxwell Show website, like you said, my research society has all kinds of documents where to go for this information. What do these words mean? Where do you find this? Where do you find that? Here's how to do this and that. And so that's what I try and do. Just help people who want to know and who are trying to find out, and just save them a lot of time of going to libraries and studying and reading. And, I've already done that for 60 years. I'd like to just help people see where to go to find the truth. And it's all there if you just know what to look for. And most people have never been told what to look for, what words are important. So that's what I do. So when we get into religion, there's so many topics that I haven't even begun to cover. But I think we talked about the social gospel of the Jesuits and the connection with the Jesuits, social gospel in the Catholic Church connecting directly to the Communist Party, the Soviet Union. There's a connection between the Jesuits, the Vatican, and the Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union, communism, that has never been brought out into the public, never been told to the public. And then when you see so many ideas being expressed in movies and television shows where these religious ideas have actually come from. So that's what I try and do. And I realize... Quick
question about the Jesuits, Jordan, if you don't mind. Because I'm somebody who takes the time to study a lot of different assassination plots throughout history.
Right.
I discovered in a lot of instances you have individuals that were either trained by, inspired by, or connected to various Jesuit orders who wind up becoming embroiled in some very significant assassination plots throughout history. It seems as though they were quite influential, not just in communist politics, but really as a de facto, almost like what people think of the CIA nowadays. And in fact, there's Jesuits within the CIA that seem to be a subset of individuals. Stop me when I say something crazy, Jordan. The thing is, I think people really miss the boat when it comes to this, that this religious order is directly connected even to what they used to call the Islamic assassins.
That's right.
Which, even the word assassin, some people claim that the root of it came from hashish, because and also sort of a mutilation of an earlier word, hassassin, which between that and hashish you get the word assassin, because apparently a lot of them used to utilize it, eat it before they went to go do their deeds in case they were captured, to minimize the pain of torture. So
yes.
They are significant characters in some of the most deep plots of early assassinations in earlier human history. I mean, well before Kennedy or America existed, or before Abraham Lincoln and our other presidents had been assassinated. The Jesuit order in and of themselves seemed to be like almost a mercenary sect that involved themselves in murder and mayhem for all sorts of political causes. Am I saying anything out of line here?
Absolutely correct. Absolutely. The Vatican has had the Jesuits doing all kinds of incredibly dark things around the world, which we today would call terrorism, blowing up buildings and killing people at the airports and all that kind of stuff. The Jesuits are very interested in that kind of stuff, and they cause that chaos to frighten the people, and so that the people will turn to the church, and they are actually perfecting their political maneuverings by assassinations, by bombings, and all kinds. And from there, you get to, if you're studying the Jesuits and their terrorism around the world, going back hundreds of years, all the way back to 1500s, you also come into contact with, in the last couple of hundred years, something in the Vatican called propaganda due, or P2. If you go on the web and just type in P and a 2, P2 Lodge, and you will see that P2 is in Italian is propaganda due. And propaganda due was a secret society of bankers and assassins and all kinds of mafiosis, gangsters, underworld organizations all around the world to create chaos, to create terrorism, to cause the death of leaders of countries. Propaganda due. And it's actually in the Godfather series, the movie Godfather series, the third in the series, the last one, Godfather 3, the whole movie of Godfather 3 is about P2, propaganda due, and what they're doing, and how the Vatican is doing business with all of the most powerful underworld organized crime figures around the world in different countries, orchestrating the distribution of drugs, heroin, all the different illegal drug trafficking, plus white slavery, child slavery. It's an incredible, dark, scary world that the Medellin cartels in South America and Central America, all those cartels that are flooding the world, especially America, with drugs and murder. You're reading about it every day. All of this is orchestrated in the Vatican, period. End of sentence, period. All of this is understood, being operated through the Vatican and our organizations like P2, the Jesuits, and other nefarious organizations and organized criminal syndicates are operating now in the Middle East. They're operating in Russia with the Russian mafia, with the Italian Sicilian connection. All of this stuff in organized crime ultimately goes back to Rome, all the way back to the days of Caesars of Rome. And as I've said before, the Roman Empire has dominated Europe for about 2,300 years. And with the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century, the official fall of the Roman Empire, for the last 1,600 years, the Vatican has dominated. Well, we're talking about Rome. We're talking about Rome as a world power. Well, Rome is a world power. Why? Because of the Vatican sits in the middle of Rome, and it is the brains behind what we used to call the ancient Roman Empire. And it's still here today. They've set up an organization. They took over our government a long time ago. The Vatican slyly came in quietly, bought up politicians, murdered some, frightened others, assassinated some, and ultimately today the Vatican dominates the United States corporation. It's an incredible story.
It certainly is, Jordan. And you know what's amazing is that in earlier shows you covered exactly how we can see the resonant organization in the United States is based on the Roman concept of organization. And you told that extensively during other shows, but here's something I think a lot of people don't know. The structure within the legitimate, or the really well organized, I should say, not legitimate, that's a bad word, but the really well organized Sicilian criminal organizations is based on the military structure of Rome. In fact, the entire concept, the way it's done, with tribute being paid upward in the chain, the idea that there are captains and individuals which are given particular ranks within organized crime. This is actually another fingerprint of ancient Rome. It's based more on the constructs of the Roman legions, but still the same structure is inspired by the same people. Is that not true?
Yes. As a matter of fact, in the second movie of Godfather 2, there was a scene in there when the attorney, the Godfather's attorney, was talking with one of the other mob guys who's been convicted, and he was going to die in prison, and so the attorney went to visit him, and you see the attorney walking with this mob guy who's going to die, they're talking about their lives together. And the attorney, I think it was the attorney, said, in the movie Godfather 2, he said, remember, our thing that we do was based on the old ancient Roman Empire. This is the way we run our business today, the same way Rome ran its business to control the world. It's never changed. It's still the same thing. And today, organized crime around the world in different countries is always being backed up and put together, organized, directed, and financed out of Europe, out of Rome. And so if you're tired of organized crime all over the world, just look at the Vatican, because that is where it's all being formulated. Put together and formulated to organize it so that it works so well. And this is why organized crime works so incredibly well, because it has a world-class institution that's been around for 2,300 years of knowing how to control nations and peoples and laws and regulations, and how to control the masses of millions of people in the ancient Roman Empire. Well, today we're still doing the same thing.
Well, what's funny is I wasn't thinking of that scene in Godfather, but since you brought it up, you reminded me. See, I told you, Jordan's mind goes to places that mine doesn't even go. I wasn't thinking of that. But even during that scene, he describes how an individual could turn around, and once they had been accused of betraying the emperor, they could find a way to die honorably and not have their family also punished. And he talks about opening his wrists and the whole thing, and then the character winds ends up doing that in order to, again, protect his family. You know, he's done for. He's betrayed the emperor, so to speak. He's betrayed the Don. So therefore, yeah, I mean, the honor codes and all that stuff, which you hear about among the Italians, it's all based on this. Now, what's fascinating is, now, you've covered this in a way, but I just wanted to mention that part about how not just the governments, but the criminal organizations are also constructed under the same template. But here's the amazing thing, Jordan. You were going to tell us about how it is this could be changed or reformed, or the reformation of, and the roots of how it all got there. I mean, is it all just the Roman structure repeating itself throughout history, or is there more to it?
Oh, I think there's a lot more to it, but I think Rome perfected the establishment of the institutions of mankind that are necessary to control the man and woman and child on the earth. They were brilliant when they put together the institutions that would promote their philosophy and their control of the world, and do it in such a way that no one seemed to realize what was really going on. Today we have educational institutions, universities and colleges, never ever realizing the very word college comes from the collegia in Italy, in Rome. And it's called the Collegia, or the College of Cardinals. So when you go to college, that's a Latin Roman Catholic term. College. I don't care what college. It's Roman. And it's run like Rome. And so when you look at the words and terms, when you go to college, you start off and you're a sophomore. Well, in the ancient world, the word sophomore meant you were an idiot. You were totally mentally deranged, goofy idiot that didn't know how to find your way out of a paper bag. So that anything that's really screwy and stupid today we call sophomoric, meaning this is stuff what sophomores talk about. Sophomore means you're stupid. And then later on you have something called a freshman. Oh, there, you're a freshman in school. You're a fresh man. And you're a sophomore. You're ignorant and stupid. And so we're going to teach you what to kiss and when. And we're going to teach you how to operate in this world. And we will give you a diploma. If you answer all the questions correctly, then you get a diploma, which is a work permit. And now you can go out and earn a living with a work permit. But it comes from the word collegia, college, university. And so all the most important universities around the world are either owned by or run by Jesuits or some division of the Roman system of ancient Rome. So this is why I say that I don't think the world is able to extricate itself out of the mess we're in, because so many people just do not realize the size and the implications of how big this apparatus really is. It goes back thousands of years, and you think all the things that were going on 5,000 years ago was just a bunch of primitive goofballs doing whatever they call themselves doing. No, they were perfecting the whole idea of perfecting how to control the human race. And when it came to the founding of the Roman Empire, they had some incredibly fascinating ideas about how to impact the human. As a matter of fact, it was Albert Pike, the head of the Masonic order, the highest ranking Freemason, wrote a book. But I just recall that in the first couple of pages, he talked about if you're going to control the whole world, it's impossible to do because there's too many different kinds of people, too many different ideas, and you're never going to be able to force the whole human race to do anything because you just don't have an army big enough. But he said, but look at the world as one thing. one man, one woman, and one child. That's the way you got to look at the entire earth of mankind. One man, one woman, and one child. So what is it that you need to do to capture the minds and the hearts of one man? And so it explains how you work on the human mind. And therefore, if you could get one man buying into something, use the same method to get the whole male population of the world to buy into it. Because all men are men. So learn how to control one man and you've got the whole world. Learn how to control one woman, her thinking, her body, the way she feels about things, the way she views things. Learn how to control her, one woman, and now you've got all the women in the world. And so this goes all the way back to the professional politicians and the founding of America, wanting to get away from all of that. And most people are not aware that when the United States of America as a republic was originally founded, two institutions were not allowed in this country. Go back and read the encyclopedias about the founding of America, and you will find there were two separate institutions that the founding fathers of America said would not and could not exist in this country under any circumstances. One was the Vatican. One was the Vatican, and the Catholic Church, period, was not allowed to have any sway in this country whatsoever. And the other was the banking institutions of Europe and of the Roman Empire. And so today, that's all we have are banks in the church everywhere. And all the different churches, even including the York Rite cults like Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons and Seventh-day Adventists, Christadelphians, Worldwide Church of God, all of the different York Rite cults today in America and in Europe are all based on the ancient Roman canon laws, ancient Roman maritime admiralty laws, all of the secret contracts and things which have been signed to start different religions, even the whole British Israel World Federation that I talked about a long time ago. British Israel World Federation. Go do some homework on that. And you will find that there's a world of treason and all kinds of incredible lies and deception that's been perpetrated by Rome on the world. And that's what we even have today as old saying that says, all roads lead to Rome. I don't care what kind of criminality you're talking about, from child sacrifice to white slavery to buying and selling children and women around the world, to narcotics trafficking, and people who put together wars. You got to have a fight promoter, so you got to have people who put together the wars for us and sell us on the idea and then send us into battle. Well, those people are trained. You will find they're always trained at the best universities in America, which are Jesuit run, Jesuit owned. And so it's a very, very big and dark and old and ancient story that if we're, that's why I say all the time that I don't think it's possible to change the destiny of the human race now. My feeling is, and it's actually my feeling, and it's just my feeling, it's my understanding. I don't think anything is going to change for us on the earth unless and until there is some kind of an intervention in our affairs by a higher power. I would prefer to think that would be God who would intervene in our, intervene in our normal destiny as a human family. Well, we read in the Bible sometimes in the past we're told that God intervened in our business here on the earth and created a worldwide flood and killed everybody. I would not be a bit surprised if the gods themselves, the great spirits who have overseen our creation and who are watching our destiny unfold, that they are going to do something to clean up the direction and the destiny of the whole entire human family, because we have become so far out of line. We're so totally corrupt in all of our thinking that all the nations of the world are corrupt. We are now seeing slavery, prostitution, drug running, wars and violence and gang violence everywhere on the earth, including the deepest parts of Africa. Still looks just like us. What they're doing is what we're doing. So I'm afraid that for the human family, we are going to have to experience something very, very bad before the Spirit that created us can recreate us and start us back on a different road. Because if not, if we're left alone now, I don't know how we're going to make it to the next century. I don't know how we're going to make it to the next 10 years. The way things are going now.
No, so that's all true. But when you start talking like this, it brings to my mind the idea that people often talk to me about prophecy and what they think is going to happen because it's laid out in the Bible, and the interpretation then follows what they think is going to happen and what they've been told is going to happen and what the signs are. Here's what I see. Not just in what they call the Christian Bible, but it seems to me as though across time we have this recurring story where eventually mankind gets out of control.
Yep.
And once things are completely beyond repair, they're so far gone that men are irredeemable in their character in one way or another. Again, previous to the Christian Bible, previous to the Old Testament, previous to that even, the gods seem to say, okay, you know what, enough is enough. And I don't even like the term higher power anymore, to be honest with you, because I almost feel like that was implanted into the language and implanted into conversation to get us to appeal to authority, because a higher power is not even necessarily a god, right? Just a higher power in a general sense could be what? Oh, well, the government has been placed over you. They're a higher power. So I don't even like that phrase, but I'll tell you something else. It's interesting that is a recurring theme, like across cultures, across time, across disciplines, across philosophies, that eventually a correction comes in. And people talk to me all the time about, being in the end days and exactly what this means, and the book of Revelations, and what do you have to say about all that? I mean, it sounds to me like you're saying, well, that when the gods have had enough of us behaving the way that we do, and I say we as in let's include all of humanity collectively, all of us collectively, that they will do what needs to be done to reset, if you will, the situation.
Yeah, and besides, we will not learn. We will not learn by listening to an older and like they used to do thousands of years ago. The older men of the community, with the long beards, and they were the older men, and they were told, and the people were told to listen to their old fathers and all the older tribal members. They were young at one time, and they now know things that we young people don't know, and so we need to listen to their wisdom. Well, nobody's listening to anybody anymore, except the ignorant people who are listening to the silly nonsense on television. We call television evangelists. But keep in mind one thing, too, about the Bible that's important for people to know, is the book of Revelation was not allowed to be in the Bible. It started off not in the Bible. And then later on, some group decided that the book of Revelation is really important to the whole story of the Bible, so they insisted on putting the book of Revelation in. And then you will see, if you go through the history of the Bible and the development of the scriptures, then you will see, no, later on there was another group that said, no, we said take it out and leave it out. So they pulled it out again. And then later on, maybe 50 to 100 years later, some group found out the book of Revelation is so important, so they put it back in. So it's been about a dozen times it's been taken out of the Bible and put back in, and taken out of the Bible and put back in. And why? Because basically the book of Revelation has nothing to do with early Christianity. It had no part in early Christianity whatsoever. And so many things about the book of Revelation Christians have not been told. And if you were told, it would shock you, some of the stuff about the book of Revelation that we know the history of. And so today we're stuck with, the book of Revelation is back in the Bible again. And many of the church fathers said they have nothing to do with that book. It's all astrology and have nothing to do with the book of Revelation because it has nothing to do with Christianity. Well, it's still there today, and people are still looking at it and making movies and television shows and preaching on the book of Revelation, never realizing it's a old ancient book dealing with astrology. The whole entire book of Revelation is an astrological book about ancient and very ancient astrological thinking. And so go back and read it with the keeping in mind that this is a book on astrology, and then it will all begin to make sense. The story about the Queen of Heaven, and she's standing on the moon. She's standing on the surface of the moon, the Queen of Heaven. Queen of Heaven is nothing more than Isis, the astrological symbol in Egypt for Virgo, the Virgin. Virgo, the Virgin, is one of the 12 signs of the zodiac, the Virgin. And so today, one of the 12 signs in the zodiac today is Virgo, Virgo the Virgin. So she is referred to as the Virgin. Well, what do we talk about in the Catholic Church but Jesus and his mother, the Virgin? And the Pope is always bowing down and kissing the statue of Mary, the Virgin. Not Mary, M-A-R-Y. No, Mari, M-A-R-I, not M-A-R-Y. Look it up in a dictionary, a Bible encyclopedia, M-A-R-I, Mari. And so it's not Mary, Mari. Mari means fresh and clean. Well, that's what you think of a virgin. She's fresh and clean, virgin. And so therefore Mari became the Virgin Mother. And she gives birth to God's Son, S-U-N, the Son. And God's Son is in heaven. Of course the Son is in heaven. Well, he is our risen Savior. Of course he's your risen Savior. Every morning about 5:45 he rises. And if he doesn't rise, then you're dead in 3 weeks because the earth is going to freeze over. So he is your risen Savior. And he has 12 helpers. That's right, he has 12 months of the year. 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 apostles, the 12 sons, the 12 brothers of Joseph, the 12 tribes of Israel. 12, 12, 12. It's all based on the sun, the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 months of the year. It's all astrological. And so it's a whole big story that most people are not aware of, and it's way too big. It would take days and days of a presentation with slides and pictures to go back into history and trace from one century to another where these ideas have come from and how they have come down today, and we're still believing the same things they believed 10,000 years ago. It's still the same ancient old pagan religions that we've always had. We still do. We always will. It's just unfortunate that people don't have that kind of a mindset to understand where we get all of our religions and our belief systems. America today, the United States, I've said this before, but it's important to say it again. The United States federal government today is a Roman government. founded by Jesuits, set up by the Jesuits in Rome. It was founded by and based on Roman law. If you go back to the encyclopedias, Britannica and Americana, etc., and read about ancient Rome, it will tell you that Caesar, when he ruled from Rome, he ruled the whole world. The world of that time was the Roman Empire. And where was his seat of power? Officially, where did Caesar sit to govern the entire Roman Empire? Well, the encyclopedia says he ran the empire from one of the 7 hills of Rome, and it was called Capitol Hill, Capitoline Hill. Well, today, we in America, we have a Capitol Hill. And it says in the encyclopedia, Caesar each morning would go, quote, up on the hill, end quote. So we say that in our news broadcast. Well, up on the hill this morning, the president did this and that up on the hill. That's Rome. That's ancient Rome. That's the Knights of Malta. Go back and read and do some research on the Knights of Malta and the Knights of St. John and how the Catholic Church moved in on the new republic, the brand new little republics of 13 companies, and formed a huge organization that today we call it the United States. It's simply the Roman Empire. And now, like the Roman Empire, it collapsed under the weight of its own corruption. That's where we are today. We are in the process of collapsing all over the world. And all we have left now is the fighting between the Roman at the very top, all the Roman Caesars and the senators. And how did Rome rule the world? It ruled through its Senate. Up on the hill. Well, that's what we've got, a Senate up on the hill. Wake up and realize the world is collapsing and crumbling just as it was foretold, just as we know this is the way the human race has always reacted. It's always happened the same way. And so now we are in the last and final days of the Roman Empire one more time. Well, and we just don't learn.
True enough. And with the last couple of minutes of this hour, Jordan, believe it or not, we're almost through the first hour. I would like to address something. I'm seeing live interactions about part of what you're saying in the chat room and a couple other places. Okay. Yeah. And I want to address something and get your take on it with the last little bit of this hour, which will be a little less than 10 minutes by the time I'm done asking you. Here's the thing about the book of Revelations. Because immediately somebody leapt to what they're conditioned to say is, oh, well, show me where there is not truth in the book of Revelations. Show me where there's not truth in my Bible. Okay. That is not what Jordan said. What Jordan said is that it's misunderstood. And also, he said that it's been taken out and put back into the Bible several times. This is fact. Now, put that aside for a moment. I think a very key point that probably you glossed over, Jordan, because you're so used to talking about this, but I'd like you to make it very clearly, is that a lot of people interpret what they read in the book of Revelations to be very, very literal to the imagery. They literally believe that demons are going to show up on the earth and that, entire valleys will fill with blood and things like this, that this will happen in a very literal sense. In some places in the book of Revelations, it is a literal discussion. But in some places, it is not. It is an allegory which describes a whole lot of things that happen in the heavens, if you will, in the sky that you'll be able to observe. That is part of what you were saying. But I'd like you to address the idea that some people say, well, if you're not speaking to my interpretation, then you're saying that that this particular document in and of itselp is untrue. That's not what you're saying at all, is it?
No,
number one.
Not at all.
Number two, and I'm addressing a few things across the board here, so everybody be patient for a second. And Jordan, I'm very sure will speak to anything that is reasonable here, okay? Here's the other part of it, and that is that the book of Revelations, in reality, as it stands, the allegories which are described, you can find them in previous incarnations of other religions being described the same events in the heavens, the same astrological signs. Okay, maybe slightly different poetry, if you will, but quite honestly, the book of Revelations pre-existed the Bible. Okay, by a long shot. It pre-existed the original scripts that were done, by hand. The individuals who were scribes, we discussed what a scribe is in a previous show. It pre-existed all of that, is what Jordan is explaining. Now, the idea that there were previous pagan religions that had very similar things in them, that is not said to undermine the truth of what is being spoken to in the book of Revelations in any way, shape, or form. In fact, many of the pre-existing pagan cultures had very accurate ways of looking at the stars, knowing exactly where they would be as you and I speak thousands of years later, because they had been studying them for so long previous to it. So, Jordan, I'd like you to talk about the symbolism which is contained in the book, as opposed to the literal descriptions, and as opposed to the way a lot of people have been taught from the pulpit about the end time signs and things like that. I know I'm opening up a huge can of worms here, but I see people reacting, and I got a nasty reaction on Skype, but I'm going to speak very calmly to it. I've also got reactions in the chat room, and somebody wanting to, almost asking, challenging, well, debunk it then. Nobody's debunking the book of Revelations here. That's not what's happening. We're discussing it and explaining to you the origins of some of what you see there today, which, by the way, again, loaded with a whole bunch of mistranslations when you take a look at the King James Version as it was translated from the original writing of what we call the book of Revelations, and given the fact that it had been taken in and out of canon a few times, a few other things might have happened to that book as well. So, Jordan, feel free to address all of these things that I've just sort of laid out in a general sense, and we'll go a little over the hour if need be, and take a break after you address this, if you don't mind.
Okay. The book of Revelation is very important if you understand that it is not part of the original what the church fathers around first and second century, the very beginnings of Christianity. They did not accept the book of Revelation, though it was there. They just didn't accept it as part of the canon scriptures. Well, not only that, but then we have something today where we know there's about 13 to 15 other books that were written, that were prophecies, that in the Bible itself mentions those books. And that's on my research society. I've got that information on where in the Bible, Old and New Testament, talks about important books of prophecy. And it gives the names of those books of important prophecy in the Bible. But those important books of prophecy are not in the Bible. They're merely spoken about in the Bible by certain books will tell you, but this there was a book called this, and that was a very important book you need to know about. Well, go look for that book in the Bible. It doesn't exist. And so I think there's about 15 different books talked about in the Bible that were very important prophecies in those books, but they're not in the Bible. And they're left out purposely. And so you wonder, well, why are they leaving them out? If the Bible says they were important, why don't you leave them in? Well, the church fathers decided that there were some of those books didn't say things that the people would understand, so they figured we'll decide what the people will understand and what they won't. And so they left certain books out of the Bible, about 15 or 16 of them, out of the Bible and didn't put them in at all. But I think the book of Revelation is very interesting, but it is an astrological work. It's based on astrology. And in the book of Revelation, one of the most important pieces in the book of Revelation for me is the last page of the book of Revelation, which is 22:16, I think it is. the very last page of of the book of Revelation, it has Jesus saying, it quotes and says, I, Jesus, I am Lucifer. I am the bright morning star that the Bible calls Lucifer. So in the book of Revelation, go to the very last chapter, 22, and look at verse 16, where Jesus is saying, I am, and he says, I, Jesus, I am saying, and then he says, I am Lucifer. So today when you hear people talking about Lucifer's the devil, and he's the demon, the devil in the abyss, etc., no, unfortunately, you don't understand that Lucifer was a planet Venus. Venus was the first time we come in contact with the word Lucifer. It was because of Jerome. Jerome was a Catholic scholar back when the Catholic Vulgate Bible was being translated from the earlier language, from the earlier Greek and Aramaic and Hebrew languages into Latin, so that so that Rome could see the scriptures. And so the Catholic translator named Saint Jerome, he came across a word in Hebrew which he just translated the best he could, but he made a mistake. It wasn't a big mistake, but it was an error, and it was picked up and made into a bigger mistake by the church. And now today, the mistake is all over the world. He came across Saint Jerome when he was translating the Bible, came across in the book of Isaiah 14:12 through 14. That's something we could talk about on the other side of this hour, because I see us up now. But we'll talk about Isaiah 14:12 through 14 when we come back.
No, absolutely. And one other thing which I did miss was a comment about Albert Pike. Is it Albert Pike? I remember reading his stuff. It's Albert Pike, right, Jordan?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, I've got to check with you. Like I told you before, you got this stuff better in your head than I do. But I remember reading, and also reading people discussing some of the things that he had written. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people leap to a conclusion because of the mention of Lucifer in his writing. Yep. And now I'm given to understand that Pike's writing has a bunch of Latin phrases and names inserted into it, which really make it a bit difficult for some people, if they don't understand Latin at all, to read it. And honestly, when mentioning Lucifer, Albert Pike is generally referring to the planet Venus, it seems
That's
like
right.
to me.
That's right. He's talking about Venus.
Yeah, but that's because why, Jordan? In Latin, what is Venus? Venus and Lucifer are pretty interchangeable in Latin, right?
Yeah. Well, Venus was referred to as the light bringer. So if we're all in a big room, like a motion picture theater, and the lights go off and everything's off and it's dark, if somebody comes into the room, into that theater with a big light, a big flashlight or a big lantern that's lighting up everything, we call him Lucifer, because the name Lucifer means one who brings the light. He's not the light, but he brings the light. And so the planet Venus was referred to in Hebrew as Helio, or the light bringer, the one who brings the light. Why? It's because in the morning, in the ancient world, and especially in Egypt, the priest of Ra, Amun-Ra, the sun god, the priest would wake in the morning very early, and they would go out in front of the temple, and they would all sit and wait and watch for Lucifer, the light bringer, to come, which was the planet Venus. Why? Because Venus is very impressive in the morning. When it's first coming up, it's very bright, and it's really interesting. Something that bright coming up on the horizon. But it told everybody, and today it tells everyone, It's bringing the light. What are you talking about, bringing the light? The sun. The sun is the light of the world. That's why we say Jesus is light of the world. Of course, the sun is the light of the world. But Venus is not lighting the world, but Venus is telling you he's coming behind me. So when you see Venus, know the sun is coming now. Now the light of the world is going to rise, and he's going to be our risen Savior. So the ancient peoples in India and Egypt, etc., in the ancient world, all realized when that bright, beautiful, bright star, that bright planet called Venus, when you see that thing coming up on the horizon, it's not the light of the world. It's not going to light the whole earth. But it is telling you, get ready, the light is coming. He's bringing the light to the world. Why? Because he just precedes the coming of the sun. And so we call Jesus, God's Son, the light of the world. Yeah, well, who owns the sun? Well, nobody owns the sun. Well, somebody must own it. Well, if anybody owned it, theoretically, I guess you could say God owns it. Okay, so it's God's Son. And God's Son is our risen Savior. That's right, because it rises every morning. If it don't, we're dead in 3 weeks. And so the Venus was the light bringer, the one who announced the coming of God's Son, the light of the world. So today we say that Venus is the light bringer. He brings the light. And so Jesus said, I am the light of the world. I'm the one that lights the world. So Jesus is the light bringer, because through Jesus we are enlightened about God, about the universe, about our lives. We're supposedly to worship God's Son, the light of the world. And if you're looking to God's Son to learn from him, then you are his pupil, which is a term we use for the round circle of your eye as a pupil. So you're learning from God's Son. You're taking in intellectual and spiritual enlightenment from the Son. And so Jesus is the Son, and he is the one who brings the light. So it was a misunderstanding of astrological terms because the writers of the King James Bible, translators, were very, very good with the King's English, but they weren't that hot on Aramaic and Greek. And so sometimes they made mistakes and said things that weren't exactly correct. And so they misunderstood the word Helio and translated it Lucifer, when it should be just a bright star. Anything bright star that heralds the coming of the sun, the light of the world, is called Lucifer, one who is not the light, but he's bringing the light to you. And so that's that's where we get all of this stuff about Jesus being Lucifer. He is the one who's bringing intellectual and spiritual light to the world.
See now, and if you just take what you explained right there and lay it over top of, again, the narrative in the book of Revelations, this concept about the fallen star, the light bringer, all these things, the morning star coming before the sun, well, it looks to me like the house of Venus coming into play before the sun gets into a certain position. Oh, wait a minute, maybe I've said too much. But here it is. That's what's being described there. But some people think a literal demon is supposed to drop on the planet here, and then the character is supposed to re-arrive again, but this time, certainly having a different attitude, and then wars are described. A great rending of flesh on the planet is certainly described, but again, a lot of it is the allegory. We're beginning a little late here at Ocelli.com. This is the Ocelli Effect, and I am not going to waste your time with a lot of other stuff here at the beginning of this particular hour, because I want to get right back to the discussion with Jordan Maxwell, because this is a special series on religion. We're up to part 6, Jordan, and it is really, really something else. Actually, tonight, I think you're kind of on fire. You are really humming tonight with the explanations. We've had a couple of interactions from the chat room as well as on Skype. There's another question actually UK listener in the chat room right now, which we'll get to in a minute, but want to remind you guys that you can study this topic and many others even further by going to jordanmaxwellshow.com, because that is the only website that is actually Jordan Maxwell's, jordanmaxwellshow.com. And if you want to get really deep into these topics as well as many, many others, there is an extensive website which you can get to through jordanmaxwellshow.com, which is the Research Society website. And for a one-time fee, believe it or not, you can get into an area where there are ebooks, there is videos, there are a lot of pieces of research which are not out there in the public, but a lot of direction and interesting subheadings in the Research Society section. When you go to jordanmaxwellshow.com, you'll find a button that says Jordan Maxwell Research Society, and you can get right to it that way. And I'm telling you now, the stuff on there is extensive. We're really scratching the surface over this now almost 12 hours of discussion on religion, which is only one of the topics that Jordan covers, not only on his website, not only over the course of his very long career doing this, educating people, but in the Research Society website, there is a real deep dive into exactly what we've been talking about. So, we left off with the Book of Revelations. We were talking about that, and isn't it fascinating that some people react rather harshly when you begin to get right at the crux of what they think their belief system is? And here it is. It's not a matter of saying that there is no truth behind what a lot of people are espousing. The problem is that because of, things like Jordan was talking about, the mistranslations, the misrepresentations, and lack of understanding, given that, people are waiting for, demons to start raining down from the sky, and look, there might be some way that could occur, quite honestly, and sometimes I'm not sure it hasn't already happened, given the behavior of some people that are on this planet, I wonder. But, Jordan, it's something else when people, don't take a step back and want to hear about certain things, but hey, you know what? That's not what you're going to get out of a discussion with Jordan Maxwell. So again, I'm just going to shut my mouth and let you continue on, because we still have a couple things on the table here. And one of them is, we talked about the formation, the Jesuits, the influence, Rome itself, its influence. We talked about, the Book of Revelations again, this concept of an Antichrist, the concept of the light bringer, Pike, a lot of things, long before Bernays did his work, there was a guy named Pike, and, you should really get into his literature and read it, but read it carefully, because not everything is immediately as it seems. Anyway, right. Jordan, so go ahead.
I would say, if you keep in mind this name, Gerald Massey, Massey, I think it is. Gerald Massey was a very, very profoundly interesting Egyptologist. Back in the early 1900s, Gerald Massey was in New York. He was a scholar of the Egyptian world religion, and he wrote many, many volumes and volumes of books. Gerald Massey is an extraordinary Egyptologist, but he once said in one of his books, the quote was very good. He said, they, T-H-E-Y, they, whoever it is, they're going to find it very difficult. Those who have accepted the authority as truth, rather than the truth as the authority. So people have accepted authority because what do you mean authorities? Well, they're the people who write down what you are supposed to do and the way you're supposed to live. They are the authors of the law. They decide what the law should be, so they write it down. And they're called scribes, and they're scribbling the scripture, they're scribbling scribes, and so they're writing down how you should think, how you should dress, how you should operate in this world, and then you follow them, whatever they tell you to do, you follow them, and then they are the authorities. They are the ones who authored the document you call the law. Now, when I'm talking about early Christianity, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about when I say that early Christianity has no bearing whatsoever on today's Christian religion. Christianity today looks nothing like it did 1,000 years ago. Nothing. In the motion picture world, Steven Spielberg made a movie called The Raiders of the Lost Ark. And being Jewish, he did a movie, and it was a very famous movie, extremely well done, about Indiana Jones was sent to find the lost Ark of the Covenant. Well, we talked about that before. And so where does Indiana Jones go first to find the lost Ark of the Covenant, or the lost Ark of the Hebrews? He goes to Tibet, not to the Holy Land. No, Tibet is where he goes first. And then after he goes to Tibet, he finds what he needs, the information he needs now to find the lost Ark of the Hebrews. So after Tibet, where does he then go? Well, he goes not to the Middle East, not to Israel, not to the Holy Land, but from Tibet he goes directly to find the Ark in Egypt, not the Holy Land. There's nothing holy in the Holy Land. It's all a story. And so he goes to Egypt, and be damned if he doesn't find the lost Ark in Egypt. Why? It's because Steven Spielberg is a lot of things, but stupid is not one of them. He knows exactly what he's doing when he puts that into a movie, that the Indiana Jones archaeologist finds the Holy Ark of the Covenant in Egypt, because it's an Egyptian symbol that has nothing to do with the ancient Hebrews, period. Because there was no such a thing as ancient Hebrews. There was no ancient Israel. And so the next thing, this is dealing with stories in the Bible which are not in the Bible and which are not being explained to the people. The lost Ark is an Egyptian Ark, not a Hebrew Ark. There never was a Hebrew Ark. It was just a story. But in the next movie Spielberg made was the after Raiders of the Lost Ark. The next one was the hunt for the what was it called? The Last Crusade. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And what was the Last Crusade? Well, the Last Crusade was for the cup of Christ, for the Holy Grail, for the Holy Cup that Jesus was supposed to have drank from and the Last Supper. Well, the Last Supper is a metaphor. There was no Last Supper. It has nothing to do with people eating and drinking together in a supper. It has to do with the Jewish symbol of the Passover, the Passover meal. That's a whole story we could get into if we haven't, but not now. So in the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, he's looking for the cup of Christ, the cup of the Grail. And so we read in the Bible, today you can read in the Bible a point where Jesus says in the New Testament, he said, upon this rock I will build my church. Now this is important because it's in the New Testament and it's supposedly Jesus saying this. And Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And so the Catholic Church, the Roman Church said, oh, upon this rock, well, a rock in the ancient Greek was Petra, P-E-T-R-A. Petra is a rock in the ancient Greek language. In the ancient world, Petra was a rock. And so the Catholic translators, they said, oh, well, it was misspelled. See, it's spelled here in the old ancient document, P-E-T-R-A, Petra. But actually, it was misspelled. It was P-E-T-E-R, Peter. And so Peter was the rock upon which Jesus is going to build his church. And so they will tell you, well, the word Peter actually, I guess, comes from Petra. In one way or another, it comes from Petra, because Peter was like a rock. You know, he was just a big, strong guy, and he was just like a rock. And whatever he did, it was just like a big, thunderous rock. And so that's what we call Peter Petra. No, and no. when Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church, go back and look at the word rock in the encyclopedias and dictionaries of the Bible, and you will see the word rock is a word Petra, Petra. Petra is a stone rock, a huge mountainous rock, and I do mean huge mountainous rock in the country of Jordan. If it wasn't at war, so much bloodshed going on in the Middle East right now, if you had the time and the money, you could go to the country of Jordan and take a tour, and they will take you out to this enormous rock that you have to go through these canyons to get to. And when you come to it, it's a huge cathedral, a beautiful cathedral temple to an ancient gods in the country of Jordan. And that big temple out in the middle of nowhere, carved out of a huge mountain, is called Petra. Why? Because Petra is a stone. And the temple is one solid piece of stone that's chipped away and made into a beautiful temple. It's extraordinary. Well, in the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and his father, Sean Connery, if you remember, if you saw the movie, they're looking for the lost, the cup of the Grail, and it takes them to Petra in the country of Jordan. And they go through the canyons, getting to this enormous temple that anybody can go to today if you're a tourist. And it's called Petra because it's a one big rock. Well, an important point here is that Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church. And the rock is translated Petra, not Peter, P-E-T-E-R, Peter. No, Petra, P-A-T-R-A, Petra, P-E-T-R-A. And so what I'm saying is that now we see that the real story of Christianity, Jesus said, is based on Petra, that stone mountain that's carved into an incredibly beautiful temple in the country of Jordan. Jesus says in the Bible, that's the basis for my church, period. My church I am basing on Petra. So you better go back and look at the country of Jordan, and then look at Petra, the great temple that was carved out of the mountain of stone. Upon this rock I will build my church. Well, that's exactly what it is. And so when Indiana Jones and his father, Sean Connery, they go inside the great temple of Petra, and what do they find but one of the Knights Templars? One of the Knights Templars and the Knights of St. John, and he's kneeling before an altar with all of these different candles and holy things all on the altar, and he is protecting, he's standing guard over the very foundations of Christ and the Christian religion. Is in Petra, the carved temple out of a rock. And so if you really are interested in Christianity, you might want to forget all of this nonsensical stuff you've heard out of Hollywood and out of the churches, and go back and read the scripture, and it says, upon this rock I will build my church, signed Jesus. Now I'll go back and look at Petra in the country of Jordan, and you will find that there's a whole new story based on what we today believe is called Christianity. No, Christianity is a dark and profound understanding of that great temple in the country of Jordan called Petra, and who built it, and why did they build it the way they did. And that's the foundation of real Christianity, is in Petra, in the country of Jordan. It has got nothing to do with Rome, nothing to do with Babylon or any of the rest of the ancient places in the world, but right. Petra.
Well, see, and that's interesting because, I was going to point out that, first of all, the mainstream understanding of this is that the foundation of the church is in Rome, because this is the first place where...
well, it's the foundation of the Roman church.
Yes, it is. But they transpose that to show you that, the whole of Christianity begins there, according to them. And it's because, why? Well... There was Constantine, the emperor, who legitimized the religion, so to speak, at one point, right? This is the story that you're usually told. Clarification really quickly on the Indiana Jones stuff, because somebody brought it up and I don't want to delve into it, so I'm going to answer it instead of passing it along to Jordan. Yeah. Temple of Doom came out, yes, in between the Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Last Crusade. You're correct there. Secondly, that there's a lot of truth hidden in the Temple of Doom, which we'll get into at some point, maybe. Okay. Now, the Crystal Skulls thing that happened after that, okay, and according to my understanding, the Crystal Skulls are a forgery of an artifact, and many allegedly religious and spiritual artifacts have been forged over time. And that's the end of the discussion there. Now, there was somebody from a listener in the UK, a question that came across, and I wanted to enter it to you. Okay, well, I'm just going to read it as it's written, Jordan. Question to Jordan: does he know our UK courts are run by this Bible?
Heavens, yes.
Go ahead, and maybe you could speak to that really quickly. And go ahead.
Well, I even here across the pond, even in America, our courts are run by the Bible. The Bible is the foundation for what we call our judicial system of law. And so, that's why we have in Washington, D.C., that huge, enormous statue of Moses, standing in front of and near the entrance to the the legal department for the United States government, the Department of Justice.
Department of Justice, yeah.
Yeah, and we have Moses standing there with his magic wand, and the serpent on his magic wand, and it's an extraordinary subject of where do our laws come from. It goes all the way back to England. It goes all the way back to the Old Testament, the Book of Moses.
See, but is it fair to say that American courts are entirely run by the Bible, in quotes? Because, after all, I don't see the black robe anywhere in the Bible. I don't see, the black robes, first of all. Secondly, Lady Justice, that's an ancient goddess that's not mentioned in the Bible, I think. However, it's mentioned in other religious constructs. The blindfolded woman with the scales, there's a lot of symbolism there, that, I don't know, doesn't seem very biblical to me. Anyway.
Well, the lady with the lady with the weights, blindfolded is Libra, the constellation of Libra. And what was I going to tell you about the basic idea? I'm talking about the conceptual idea is that our laws come from the Bible. That's what so therefore that. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just saying
discourse.
It's interesting though, because even the use of the word justice, right? Yeah. It doesn't sound like it's just according to, when we went over the 10 Commandments and what that actually is, and we've been through that in previous shows. But I just find it interesting that there's all these different symbols going on. And the concept that, a corporation is being represented and how your name is in all caps and all that kind of good stuff all converges in the legal society. Yeah, okay? Yeah, I know. Which is really bizarre to me because, there are some people that think, well, it's biblical law, but it's not. It's really not.
It's not because there was no Moses to start with. Moses is a fictitious character that was written into the scriptures probably during the Middle Ages, in AD, in the Middle Ages. There was no ancient Israel, so we know there was no ancient Moses, and all the stories coming out of the Old Testament are not really BC religion. I believe that I'm sure that there was, in fact, no BC religion called Judaism, period. There was no Jewish nation. There was no ancient Israel. There was no Moses. There was no Abraham. All of these people in the Bible can be traced back if you go and sit in the library for days upon end and photocopy the documents. You will see that all of these stories in the Old Testament were just that, stories.
Right. Look, with the last quarter of this show, though, I know I'm cutting you off again, but I really want to get at something that you mentioned. And here's something that Jordan got me to realize. We've exchanged a few emails this week and showed each other some things in the news and a few other things. But I got to say, it's interesting to me, this thing that you mentioned here about Moses being depicted with his magic wand. Okay. Let's hang that sentence there for a moment. Moses and a magic wand. All right. Well, given to watching, Charlton Heston and all this kind of stuff, you would think that it's a staff, and that's usually what they say it is. It's a staff. Now, I could talk to you about who else carries a staff during that part of history, and this is why I believe it's meant to represent one of the pharaohs who was then sent out of the country with his people. But anyway, that's another story. Here's what's interesting. Not only is Moses depicted with this magic wand, which it is a magic wand, by the way, but also Jesus is depicted with a magic wand in a lot of places. And I know it sounds like I'm making a joke. I'm not. What is with the magic wand being in the possession of both Moses and Jesus? I mean, and if you want, you could also address why it is that Moses seems to have horns all the time. But I think we started to talk about that before. I want to know about this magic wand, because this, I never saw. I've seen many art, pieces of art over the years, that depict Christ. I have. And I never took note in my mind that there was any of them that had Christ with a magic wand, or with a stick even. I never saw that until Jordan pointed it out to me, most recently. So if you wouldn't mind addressing this, and believe it or not, guys, go ahead and do an image search, and, on any search engine, and ask for Jesus with a magic wand. You'll get some interesting pictures. Then, if you're done looking at those, go look at Moses with a magic wand. There's a lot of them. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
Jordan.
Ezekiel and Isaiah, Ezekiel and Daniel, all these statues in the churches of Europe show them all there doing their miracles with a magic wand. They're raising the dead with a magic wand, etc. Well, the magic wand was used by the Druids, the Druid culture of Europe. And I told you that before. North, East, West, and Southern Europe were Druidic. And Druids were, the part of Europe that we Americans come from originally was from Europe. And so you take the North, East, West, and South, which you spell N-E-W-S, which is news. You get the news. Anything that happens in the North, East, West, and South is N-E-W-S, news. And so you find out that if you do some research, go to the web if you want, and type and go to image, where you'll only see pictures, just image, and then type in Druid high priest, Druid religion and Druid priest, and then look at the way the ancient Druids in Europe dressed. They were holy men. They were the holiest of holy men in European culture. They were the lawyers, the doctors, the judges, the religious leaders, all the important people who led the Europeans for thousands of years had to belong to a society called the Druids. And one of the most important symbols in the Druid religion was a magic wand. Why? Because like Mickey Mouse with his magic wand, and Merlin the magician from England with his magic wand. And today we have orchestra conductors and musical conductors who lead the music with a magic wand. Well, magic wands were always made out of the wood of a holly tree. It's made out of Hollywood. And today we have magic of Hollywood. Why? It's Druids who are running Hollywood. But the Druids, if you look in the encyclopedia, go on the web to image and type in Druid priests, and you'll see how the Druid priests were dressed. And take out all those pictures and save all the pictures of all the high priests of the Druids and how they dressed and what they believed, etc. Then go to the web to image and type in Jewish high priest. It's identical. The pictures are identical. Everything that the Druids taught is what the Jews taught. Everything that the Druids wore, their high priests and their religious services and the religious, instruments, all of the holiness of the Druid people is Jewish. So therefore now you say, wait a minute, there's a connection between the Druids and Judaism? Yeah. Well, the most important, impressive peoples in the Druid community were the Germans. And the Germans, going all the way back thousands of years, the Germanic race of people, the Germans, and then you start to see for the first time a connection between the ancient peoples called the Germans and the Druids. And then you see the connection between the Druids and the Jews. Now you become to see the connection between the high priests of the Germanic people and the Druids, who were the high priests of the Germanic people, and today the religious garb and religious implications of the clothes of the Jewish high priest. So the bottom line is that there's a very ancient, old, and hidden connection between the Druids and the Jews, the Jewish people. And there's an extremely ancient and dark hidden connection between the Jewish people and the Germans. The Germans are the ancient Jews, and the ancient Jews are the Germans. And they both come out of the old Germanic Druid empire, so that Judaism today is a totally different religion than you think it is, as its history has nothing to do with the Middle East. There was no Middle Eastern Israel and the holy people of God, and all of that is a story. Just like the Bible is called the greatest story ever told. No, go back and look at the connection between the Druid peoples of Europe and the German people of Europe, who today we call them, the Germans today is referred to as the Holy Empire. The Holy Roman Empire was centered in Germany. But the Holy Roman Empire centered in Germany was based on what we call Judaism. So that the Jews, the Germans, and now you get into the dark religion of the Jews in relation to the Germans.
Well, and this is the greatest story ever told, but what's interesting to me is that I've seen many a retelling of it. And I've been to different churches, and I have listened to sermons about Jesus, and I have, like I said, Moses has a staff, but I've never heard of Jesus having or read about Jesus having a magic wand. And I'm wondering, what is this significance? Why did they take it out of his hand, for a lot of these depictions of him?
Because they don't want you to know that Judaism is actually a Gentile Druidism. That's why.
Okay.
The powers that be do not want you to know, which I've talked to rabbis and rabbinical authorities, and they agree. They say, yeah, you're right, so what? And I said, well, then why don't you tell your people in your synagogue? And then I found out why the synagogue is spelled S-I-N in Israel and S-Y-N in America. Well, there's another reason why. It goes back to the Druids again.
Right, right. And we've talked about that in previous shows. You can hear about why it is Mount Sinai and all of that relating to this question. But what's fascinating to me is, no, they don't want you to know that. But also there's a few more things about this I think they don't want you to know. And again, the art continues to reveal, because it is just art. It's not as though these are sacred artifacts, these depictions where you can, and I'm sure people have done it now, have searched on the internet to find Jesus with a magic wand.
Yeah.
And some people think of, well, what proof do you have that there's the practice of magic? Still, let's talk about magic for a second. Well, there's something called the Kabbalah, isn't there, Jordan?
Of course.
So what is that for somebody who's going, I never heard of this before?
Yeah, well, Kabbalah goes. That's an old ancient teachings coming out of the Babylonian Empire, coming out of Iraq and Iran. Iraq was referred to in the ancient world. What we call today Iraq was called Babylonia. And the Iraqi religion, that's why the United States went into Iraq. There was a reason why we went into Iraq, because that's Babylon. This is the home of the Babylonian book of the Jews. And the Jewish religion is based on a lot of the old Babylonian teachings coming out of Iraq. That's why there was an Iraqi war. That's a big, big story here that's never been told.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to get into that, because to me, and not tonight, but one of these episodes, I would like to really study that with you, because I think there's going to be some really interesting information that you could bring forth about specifically that. But also, the Kabbalah, which I mentioned, it's a book. And it does exist in Judaism today. It literally, the word cabal, right, is based on the same thing. Yep. So a cabal, to be honest with you, see, here's the funny part about this. It is the collective will, believe it or not, the act of prayer as it's represented, by a lot of the organized religions currently. Yep. Has something to do with the Kabbalah and the establishment of the collective will being channeled by a magician. I'm not kidding you. Jordan, please stop me when I'm saying something out of line here. This is part of where those concepts come from.
Yes. As a matter of fact, you will go on the web and type in Kabbalah hand sign. Kabbalah hand sign. And you will see all of the most important people, from the David Rockefellers to the Rothschilds to all the international bankers to movie stars and musical stars and Hollywood personalities and industrial giants in Germany and around the world, and the British prime ministers and all of the most important people in the world are giving a Kabbalistic hand sign. And watch it on television. When you see these infomercials and big commercials on something, whatever the commercials are selling, watch the hand signs of the people presenting the commercials or the infomercials. And watch the hand signs on the news at night when you see the president and the prime ministers of England, etc., and they're all sitting around talking. Watch their hand signs to each other.
Well, let me introduce something here too, Jordan, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but even among street gangs, you have what they used to call the Crips. I believe they still exist. Guess what? They use a form of communication that some people refer to as hand mandalas. And guess what? The gang signs, whatever it is you call it, these different formations with their hands, it's the same language.
That's exactly right. Precisely the same language.
Another interesting thing is you want another pop culture reference really quickly. Star Trek. How about that? Because Spock uses that split finger thing, live
That's
long
right.
and prosper.
That's right.
It's actually a rabbinical blessing.
That's right.
According to the Kabbalah, which is, it's not a negative thing, what Spock is doing. But I'm just saying, go ahead.
When Mr. Spock gives that strange hand sign, which we're all used to, when you divide the hand, but divide the four fingers, and down the middle as a hand sign Mr. Spock on Star Trek gives, that's a rabbinical blessing. Now, in Christianity, the Pope makes the sign of the cross on himself, from his head to his stomach, to both shoulders. He makes the sign of the cross, which is a blessing to the people, supposedly. Well, when the Jewish rabbis give a blessing to their people, they reach their hands in the air with Mr. Spock's with that divided hand sign that Mr. Spock gives in the television show. But what that is, the reason why Mr. Spock gives that hand sign is because it represents the sun, which is the symbol, which is the ultimate god of Judaism, is the sun. Judaism is a sun-based religion. It's based on the worship of the sun. And so the sun in the age of Aries, the ram, is of course a goat or a ram, but the age of the sun in the age of the ram was what Mr. Spock is giving that symbol, because that divided hand sign, divided fingers, is a goat's hoof, the hoof of a goat. And so I've got that on my website. You can see it in the documents from the Jewish Encyclopedia showing you that Mr. Spock's hand sign is a symbol of a goat god, the symbol of the god of Aries, the goat, the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world, the Lamb of God, the goat god, Baphomet, and he is the god of the Hebrews. Well, it's all based on the ancient sun worship. And that's a whole story in itself.
Well, right. And here's one question that I have personally. I've always found it interesting that people that want to describe Satanism and Luciferianism often point to the imagery of a goat or a ram.
That's right.
And they tell you that, that this is the thing, they like to sacrifice goats, or it is Baphomet, who is the goat, the god that appears like a goat, actually has the cloven hooves. They talk about, the concept of a Seder, and not the religious ceremony of the Seder. I do mean a Seder in and of itself, which is, supposed to be a crossbred man and goat together. Literally like with the body of a goat, but the torso and head of a man that has horns, this kind of thing. And I find it interesting that, it seems like different people pick up these symbols in different ways. What do you make of that? I mean, is that just people being confused because it recurs in so many different places, this concept of the goat, the ram, the horned being in one way or another? We talked about the literal imagery of Satan as it's presented to most people with the red skin and all that. And we talked about it, Dionysus being the inspiration for that. But why do you think we see this goat imagery all over the religions and anti-religions and allegedly dark practices, but also being part of the biblical history? I mean, is it all incorrect? Is it all correct? Or is it just so confused and convoluted at this point that it would take us another 2 hours to unpack it? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, first of all, if you remember, on 9/11, when that happened, when the World Trade Center was attacked, it said, which I picked up on immediately. I knew there was something wrong here, completely wrong, because it showed President Bush sitting there reading a book with the children in the school classroom, and it said, they kept prominently saying it was a book about the goat. And the president
literally called My Pet Goat, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my pet goat. Well, look up My Pet Goat and Freemasonry, and you will see that the Masonic Order has a whole story about, quote, my pet goat, end quote. It's a Masonic term. It's a Masonic idea, and that's why when somebody makes you mad, we say, well, he got your goat. No, that's a Masonic term in Freemasonry. So, right. And so the president is reading about my pet goat. Well, the goat is Aries, the ram, the Lamb of God. And that's why Jesus is connected to Bacchus Dionysus. Bacchus, look up Bacchus. Bacchus Dionysus and you will see something that looks exactly like the devil. This incredibly ugly man with a snarl on his face and horns and a goatee, looks just like the devil, but he's called Bacchus, Dionysus in the ancient Greek world, and he was the god of grapes and wine. And then you look at the symbols for Jesus, and you will see Jesus is Bacchus, Dionysus, and he has around him all the pictures around about Jesus have him sitting in the midst of wine and bread. And of course, in the Catholic Church, they offer in Sunday communion the wine, the priests drink the wine, and the bread they offer to the parishioners. So the bread and the wine in the Catholic service is actually the bread and wine of Bacchus Dionysus, who we use as a symbol for the devil. Incredible.
Several times also in the Old Testament, as they call it, you find that the offering of animals being sacrificed, well, it seems to me as though, people talk about the lamb and the sheep and so on and so forth, but quite honestly, what seems to be sacrificed, for the best of my knowledge, I think even when the story of bring your son to the altar and I'm going to have you kill him, and okay, wait a minute, I'm not going to have you kill him, but you're going to have to make a sacrifice. I think a goat shows up then too, and it seems to me as though goats and rams are offered as sacrifice in the Old Testament stories as well. Now, does that tie to this story in the same way?
Yes, because Jesus himself, supposedly, in the story of the Bible, he is sacrificed. By the Almighty God allows him to be sacrificed and die. And so, therefore, the God of the Bible is the same ancient God that has required all the ancient cultures of the world to sacrifice a goat, sacrifice a lamb, sacrifice your baby, sacrifice humans. And this is why Abraham is told, take your son out. God says to Abraham, take your son out and cut his head off. Sacrifice him to me. I want to see it. And so Abraham takes his young son out, puts him on a rock, and gets out the knife and is going to stab him and kill him. And then the angel pops in and says, no, we just wanted to see if you were stupid enough to do that. So God says, you don't have to sacrifice him. He now knows that you will do whatever he tells you to do. So you don't have to sacrifice. Well, myself, I say, wait a minute. If God tells Abraham to go out and sacrifice your son, your boy, then that tells me that according to the ancient Hebrew philosophies of theology and religion, that it was all right for a human sacrifice. And then you begin to see how, according to the ancient Jews, there were human sacrifices. As a matter of fact, it was very famous with Marduk, when the Jewish nation would sacrifice their babies and their children to Marduk. And go back and look at Marduk on the web, go to image and type in Marduk, and you will see this enormous big statue with fire in his lap. It's a big statue and there's a fire, and the Jews would take their babies and throw them into the fire to offer their children to Marduk. And so it goes back to Marduk, the god of the sun, the sun god Marduk. Why? Because that's why he had a fire in his lap. He was the god of fire, the god of the sun. So sun worship has always been the center for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It all goes back to India. It's a strange, incredible story. And when you think about the Germans, they were sun worshipers also. And then with the rise of Adolf Hitler, they personified the sun as a swastika, because everybody knows the swastika was a sun symbol. And so, if they were connected to Judaism, which the German people were, and the Germans were already sun worshippers, well, so were the Jews. They were worshiping the sun. But they said to cover it up, the Jews said that the name of God is too holy for us to use. So we don't want to use his name, in everyday speech because his name is too holy. And so we will have a substitute name. And the substitute name is on all the altars of Jewish synagogues all over the world. Any synagogue you will see has a round circle of a yellow sun with the sunburst, and inside the sun on the altars of any synagogue you will see 4 letters, which is translated tetragrammaton. Tetra is 4, gramma is a letter, and Aton, the Aton, is a sun god in Egypt. So it's tetragrammaton. So the Jews were worshippers of the tetragrammaton, but his name is so important that we can't use his name, so we just call it tetragrammaton. No, tetragrammaton. Look up Aton. It's the old ancient sun god of the Jews. And in Germany, it's a swastika. And that's why today in Israel, there are synagogues in Israel today. Go on the web and type it in to look and see the pictures on the image. Look up Jewish swastika, and it will show you synagogues in Israel that have big red swastikas on the floor, just like the Nazis. Why? Because it's all connected behind the scenes that you didn't know anything about. The Jewish symbol for their god was the sun. The Jewish symbol for the sun was a tetragrammaton, or the swastika. The swastika can also be made out of Jewish letters. There's a connection between Jewish swastikas and Nazi swastikas. The German people, my God, there is a story here you are not going to believe once you sit down and start researching this subject and spend a couple of months just looking at the basic concept, and you will see there's a very ancient and old connection that's been well hidden because of between the Jewish religion, the Nazi party, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and all of of what we call terrorism going on throughout the world. Something very big is happening on the earth, and we haven't got the faintest idea in the world what is going on. You better wake up. The world is not what you thought it was. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are nothing more than basic ancient religions worshiping the pagan gods of ancient India. It's an incredible story of the betrayal of the human race.
Absolutely, and one that we are certainly exposing through this series, and we're just about out of time, so I want to point you guys once again to JordanMaxwellShow.com. Yes, you have to put in Jordan Maxwell Show altogether.com. That is the only website that is Jordan Maxwell's. When you go there, you can get a link into, because there's a button that says Research Society. Go into the other website, which is for those that wish to really delve deeply into this. And a lot of information is on that website already. More is being added continuously, and there's a lot of it backed up. As fast as your webmaster can work, he is doing it. But there is a ton of information on there that goes deeper into this topic and many others through the Jordan Maxwell Research Society website. But you got to start by going to JordanMaxwellShow.com. Jordan, with the last couple of minutes here, obviously we're not going to get into any other deep subjects right now, but is there anything that you'd like to say before we kind of close out for this week?
Yes.
Obviously this is part 6, but we're going to have to get into part 7 next week. And we're going to continue this until Jordan feels as though he's done. And we've definitely covered a lot of material tonight that has not been heard during the previous 10 hours of discussion. Now we're on 12 hours of discussion, but extremely important focus on religion in general, and we still haven't fully made it away from the Old Testament.
I know. We haven't even come to the New Testament yet. The one thing I would like for the audience to know is that there are other videos out there with me talking about, the Jordan Maxwell videos.com and there's pictures of me with a pair of sunglasses because my eyes were killing me that day, and I was forced into making this commercial. I didn't want to make it at all. I thought it was stupid to make a commercial me with sunglasses on. But anyway, there's websites out there with me talking about this is where you will find my videos and my videos here in JordanMaxwellVideo.com. Well, all of that was recorded a long time ago, and I have nothing to do with that organization or that group, nothing whatsoever to do with them. I get nothing from them. I have nothing to do with them. So when you see JordanMaxwell.com and you see an image of me talking, just know I don't have anything to do with those people anymore. Nothing. So there's a lot of people using my name out there to make themselves a lot of money.
Right.
But my only website I have is Jordan Maxwell Show, period. JordanMaxwellShow.com.
Right, and that is the only website that is Jordan Maxwell's, as I've said. And do encourage you to go over there and explore further what we've discussed tonight. But there is a lot more even in the Research Society website, which you can also get to by going to JordanMaxwellShow.com.